Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Magenta Mix Podcast. Today, we're excited to have a special guest, John Benbrook. John's the president of Oasis Senior Advisors and has been instrumental in leading Oasis through significant change. This change includes engaging and aligning the Oasis network of franchisees in strategy and culture. And most recently, he's been instrumental in facilitating the successful acquisition of Oasis by Silver Assist. Oasis Senior Advisors is a leader in providing personalized senior living solutions and has long been known for its commitment to very high touch, white glove concierge service through local experts. They help families navigate the complex decisions around senior care. With John at the helm, Oasis has strengthened its impact by aligning its strategy and culture to meet the evolving needs of both clients and franchisees. In addition to guiding the organization through a transformative merger with Silver, John has played a pivotal role in positioning Oasis for long-term success. His leadership throughout these changes has ensured that both the clients and franchisees of Oasis benefit from the combined strength of both organizations. Please join me in welcoming John Benbrook to the podcast. Welcome, John Benbrook. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today and sharing your story about Oasis and Silver Assist. Let's start by helping listeners and viewers understand a little bit about Oasis. So what's your mission? What kind of services do you provide? Who's your client? How are you structured? All that kind of stuff. Take it in any order you want. But tell us a little bit about Oasis.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. The mission of Oasis, first and foremost, is to reduce the time and stress on our seniors and their families when they're searching for alternative living options. You know, we make every effort to determine what makes each of our families, our seniors, unique and provide the guidance so they may find as close to perfect fit for the services that they're looking for. We're a franchise system. We'll always be a franchise system. We've recently acquired some of those back. So now we have some owned and operated territories around the country. We're a national franchise system. We are now part of a Silver Assist, which I'm sure we'll talk more about as we go forward. But we're now part of a portfolio of companies that Silver owns and operates, really focused on exactly our mission at Oasis. As we've been a business for 10 years, we've joined a team and a portfolio of companies that have the same mission and equally as important, I think, a shared values and culture. So
yeah, if you don't have shared values and culture in our personal relationships or our working partnerships, it gets very difficult quickly.
Yeah.
So thanks for pointing that out. I want to take a step back, John, and talk a little bit about the clients and what you provide for them. So seniors and their families are your clients. And primarily at Oasis, or historically, you've been helping them find places where they can live when they're leaving their own homes. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So historically, and again, the 10-year journey that we've been on as an individual business before joining Silver, our main mission was to help families find assisted living communities as that senior, when it was too difficult for that senior to stay home, right? Whether it was too difficult or too costly, right? So we were able to connect them with a senior living community. Our services now are much more broad with regards to finding a community, providing potentially an introduction to a home care company, to provide moving company, real estate as they look to sell their home to afford the senior living. We also provide financial service. Providing and pointing them in the right direction in terms of services is one important part. The second part is, can they afford it? It makes no sense for the senior or for our advisors to try to introduce them to services that they'll never be able to afford. And again, This is where the unique aspect of each family come into play.
So with so many people becoming senior citizens every single day, I know that you have a broad audience there and you have a lot of competition. From what I understand in our relationship, you have a unique proposition in that you are very high touch. You're what I would refer to as white glove. You're not just referring people to facilities where they may decide that they're a good fit and live. You're actually going with seniors and their families on these visits, you are screening for them in advance. Is that right?
100%. We've done that from the inception of our franchise, where we're providing that local knowledge, that high touch concierge white glove service. It's not only important to provide information, it's equally or more important that the family understand it, understand those options. Just by search, you can get some information. You can make a lot of assumptions that could really cause a delay in decision making, confusion in decision making, and making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
So by really being able to connect with that family and build that trust by providing that information, we take it a step further. We'll go in and attend tours with the family. We'll join them as they look at their options. So they see the what, they also see the how, and they move forward with, and again, different options for, compensation. We're not going to point them in a direction of a community they'll never be able to afford. It's the last thing we want to do to a senior.
Yeah. So when I think about, and not just the afford piece, there's also the right fit, right? Not every facility, for lack of a better word, if there is a better word, you'll tell me, not every facility is going to be the right place for your family member. So finding that right fit is like, finding the right partner.
You're absolutely correct. And it is not a facility. I don't think any senior that I've ever met or their family wants to help their mom or dad or grandma, grandpa move into a facility.
Yeah.
It sounds very clinical. It's really community. They're moving from their existing community into a community that we have worked with the family to understand. Okay, sure, price is one thing. Location. Families are more diverse, geographically dispersed around the country. Where does mom and dad, grandma, grandpa want to live? Right. Do they truly have a favorite son that they want to be, or daughter that they want to be near, right?
Clearly it's me, clearly it's you.
That's right, exactly.
So let's dig in a little bit, because you had mentioned something very important in that you are a franchise network. While you've bought some back and you have some company stores, if you will, you're still largely a franchise network. Is that right?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. We are looking to continue to expand. Right now, we're currently in we have 135 territories, the mix of owned and operated, but we look to expand. We're averaging about 3 territories per month. We want to make sure that we're very calculated in bringing on the right person that has the right skill set and the emotional capacity to support our seniors. And we want to make sure that our service levels continue to be right in line with our growth.
All right. So when you say averaging 3 a month, opening 3 new territories per month.
From the franchise system, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So you have 2 things going on right now that I can see that I'm sure that our listeners and viewers would be really interested in. One is, how do you align strategy and culture, which you mentioned at the onset, in a franchise organization? My experience in working with franchise organizations is it's their largest challenge. And then how do you onboard new franchisees so that they are creating this consistent experience for our clients and their families? So just talk a little bit about what your approach has been to aligning franchisees and new franchisees, existing and new franchisees, to your strategy and culture.
Yeah, it's a great question and a great point, and something that we've talked about quite a bit, right? So it starts with defining it, and then it's communicating our strategy and really how we define our culture. I think in any organization, you need to communicate early, often, and in multiple ways, right? In a franchise system, it presents other challenges, right? Our franchisees are super busy in their local business, and sometimes they can get myopic. This is my business. And, getting them to actively listen, to digest the information, to recognize that they're part of a broader group and a broader network, and then understanding the value that being part of that broader group is really my job, right? So doubling down on me and our leadership team to actively listen, right? It's one thing to have them actively listen. We need to actively listen, right? That's critical. If an owner feels, and I believe this with all my heart, if an owner feels heard and they believe they're part of defining that strategy and contributing to that culture, that aids, in people achieving ownership. We've spent quite a bit of time as recent looking at the difference between accountability and ownership. And if you think about it, an individual who embodies ownership takes on the initiative and takes on the responsibility for their growth and the success of their team and their business. Accountability focuses on being responsible for the tasks either you assign to yourself or others assign to you.
Yeah, you make a great point, because ownership and the way you've just defined it has got to be key to franchisees. They're entrepreneurs. They've invested their money. They're running their business. And what you just said is your job right now is to make sure that they feel heard and a part of that strategy and culture, so that they, my word, can embody it. They can bring it to life. Is that right?
Yeah, it's absolutely right. It's going to help knock down, every organization, no matter where you sit, and you see this, Gary, with the work that you do across all the companies that you work with. When I was with Hewlett Packard, there was always a tug between the manufacturing team, the teams that made the equipment, and then the sales team, which I was a part of. We make the best equipment in the world. You guys have a walk in the park. Well, you don't understand the pricing pressures and the competition. So there's always that tug. And the way leadership addresses that tug by bringing us together to focus on our mission and our purpose is going to help, right? It's going to really.
So, John, I know over the last couple of years that you all have been on a journey to realign, even redefine your strategy and deliberately create a intentional culture, or be very intentional about your culture. What was the indicator for you that it was time to readdress that with your franchisees and with the leadership team?
Gary, when I joined the business, when I joined our founder on the corporate team, we call it the support team because corporate has a negative connotation, right? It gets at us against them. So it's really our support. Our goal is to support our franchisees. But when I joined, having been just a franchisee for the system, I brought a franchisee mindset to my role, right? Into my position. I had some immediate thoughts on several business areas, but the first was improving our culture. Number one, knew it immediately. We had to really earn back the trust of our franchisees. And I led our leadership team in setting the expectation of what our franchisees could expect going forward. We had a mission, we had a vision. Now we had to double down on supporting our franchisees in the field and really doing it in a timely way. It started with one of the questions that I asked our owner, which he and I laugh about now because it seems so silly. But, when I joined that team, I asked him just point blank, did he feel we were a service-based business or a software-based business? And that'll come into play in a minute. But, this was a critical step, as historically Oasis wanted to keep all service and everything in-house. Now, while I understand the value of that to some extent, you can control deliverables, you can control timeline. If you don't have the appropriate infrastructure, the appropriate capability, the appropriate leadership team, that's not going to work. And that's where we were. So immediately we realized we had to, one, we were a tech-enabled service, and we needed to continue to be a tech-enabled service.
Yes.
So we outsourced the platform, we realigned our structure, and then we took it a step further where we really needed to lay down and make a bet. What expectations were we going to put forth in front of our franchisees? What could they expect for not only what we were going to do to support them, but how and when we were going to do it?
Yeah. You started out by saying, when we were talking about culture, we needed to do it in a timely way. What do you mean by that?
I think communication, if it's dated and people are guessing, I'll say it simply. I'm from Jersey. I keep it simple. Bad things happen, right? Getting information out transparently and timely and consistently is what I'm learning as a leader. That's table stakes. That's what you have to do.
So because so many of our participants, our audience in this podcast are really trying to learn how to lead change, let's just spend a minute there. What you're learning as a leader is time is of the essence. Timeliness is like you need to act now. And you really need to communicate, engage your people earlier rather than later. Is that it? Is that the summary that I should be getting from this?
As always, you say it better and more efficiently than I do.
Well, you get to have a better head of hair, so we're even there. So time is of the essence and communication is key.
Very much.
Where are you in the journey John, I know that when I checked in with you all a few years ago, you were beginning that culture journey. I also know from my work with clients that culture change is oftentimes a multi-year effort. Where were you 2 years ago? Where are you today?
2 years ago, we were flat out right in the midst of walking into a civil war. It was us against them.
Between franchisees and
Franchisee and corporate. It was civil. There was, things hurled across the fence. People were ducking. People weren't transparent. They weren't open, honest. There was a lot of negativity, if I'm being dead honest with everybody. Where we are now, much better, much stronger, much further in our journey, right? Our commitment, I'll say both sides, but we will not stop until we are one. But there is an element of both sides, right? And the commitment to transparency, for openness, for directness is very apparent in our organization right now.
So what changed? Went from civil war between what was then corporate and now is support and our franchisees, or Zs as I know you call them. What has changed to get you from civil war to, well, let's term it, what would you call it today? Civil war to?
Simply collaboration, right? And I think we're working towards. We're not quite there yet, but we need to continue to commit to a single focus on a single purpose, right?
Oh, okay. So let's go back before we get there, because that sounds like it's in the windshield. Let's look in the rearview mirror. What has changed to get you from civil war to collaboration? Even if it's not perfect yet, you're in a place of collaboration, which I think most franchisors would be envious of that.
Yeah.
What changed?
Sweat, blood, and tears. But all kidding aside, it's what we talked about. It's better and more timely communication, direct communication or transparent, and it's not wavering from what we set out to do. A single focus on meeting the expectations that we set. It's not what you do, it's what you say. And I know that sounds corny, and that's been bastardized in many different ways across many different businesses. But if you really break it down, the best way to earn trust is do what you say you're going to do.
So is that both sides, the franchisor and the franchisee here, say what you're going to do? Is that what's changed?
I think we've made great strides. I think we need to continue to keep making great strides.
So, John, I also want to compliment you, because what I've observed from your organization is that the support team, formerly the corporate team, didn't do that in a vacuum. If I understand what you've done correctly, you've brought in your most influential franchisees into the conversation about what is our culture and what is our strategy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So we've historically had an annual convention where we come together to educate, to connect. From that, we've heard loud and clear that we want more opportunity to bring in, create more opportunity for further collaboration. So we went and defined what we call the strategic summit. That was 2 years ago, and that's the beginning of the Civil War. We handpicked influential or successful franchisees. That's continued to evolve into our third year, which we just had. We have different levels of franchisees. I'm sure this is common across all franchise systems, but what we call solopreneur, individual working a territory, doesn't want any headaches for management. They want to run their own business. We now have team leads. They create a smaller team. They might buy a second territory. Then we have the empire builders. This is going to be a team of 5, 6, 7 advisors, multiple territories. And now our summit represents each one of those categories. So we're not just locked into the big dogs, right? We can really look at the need across all of those categories, but it's our continued commitment to have their voices be heard and, candidly, for us to learn from them.
Yeah, nice. I like the way you broke down the 3 categories of franchisees and that they all get a voice. It's a big world out there, and it sounds like not one size franchisee fits all for you, for Oasis. Kudos on that. Let's shift the conversation, if we can now, to something to me that's remarkable. You're in the middle of a culture change. You're in the middle of executing a new strategy. And at the same time, you start to navigate and being acquired by Silver Assist. And part of your setup for us earlier was they're providing a larger platform. They are bringing lots of products and services that seniors and their families can use as they transition to the next stage in their life. Putting out a new culture, bringing a new strategy to life, and being acquired is a lot to swallow all at once. So share a little bit about that decision to move with Silver Assist and what this acquisition provides for you and frankly for Silver. Why do they want you and why did you want them? Why is this a good fit?
Well, that explains a lot of the hair you mentioned being gray, right? Over the last 2 years, I've aged. I feel like I've been the president of the United States with how quickly that ages. It's been a lot. There's no doubt about it. I mentioned when I joined the team, what I realized and what we realized is for us to further fulfill the commitment that we've set to our franchisees, first and foremost, we had to strengthen our infrastructure, strengthen our capability internally. We also needed to think about how we can potentially move forward in the industry and differentiate ourselves. And I recognized with our founder that we weren't going to do it on his pocketbook, that, we needed a cash infusion, a partner that could provide technical resources as well as the financial resources for us to build the business. So we began our journey. We started to talk to some groups. Candidly, we didn't think it was our time. We didn't think our founder was going to get the return he wanted. And we couldn't find a company that we felt strongly about. Enter Silver Assist. I went into these meetings with all transparency. I didn't want to like them. I didn't think it was our time. And I walked away from the first meeting going, we had subsequent conversation, a lot of different meetings. Not only did I respect who they were, what they were trying to do, I realized quickly, and again, not to beat this into the ground, but their culture and their core value was very close to what we were trying to accomplish and what we were building on, right?
You realize you're describing dating, right? You go on a blind date with no expectations, and then you find out you have the same values, and that's the foundation for a relationship.
Yeah, for sure. And what was important for Silver when they were looking at this, right? They started and they set out to do this digitally, right? There are digital aggregators out there. There are two forms. There's really two models supporting seniors right now as they look at other options, as they continue to evolve, their needs evolve. There's the online model, and there's groups out there, the digital aggregators that are presenting information and review sites. They get the information. They get it out to many different communities. They give many different options to the family, but it is not local. So Silver said, hey, we have strong capability. We want to bolt on financial solutions to that and almost create, the Nerd Wallet meets, home.com, right? Something that's just digital. They started to go down that road and they quickly realized that they needed that local support.
They needed it why? Because there's a differentiator. There are too many people that are just in the digital. I'm thinking of 1-800-DENTIST, right? You call them and they'll refer you, or you go online, they refer you to a dentist near you. And if I think about that in your business, they saw local being important as a differentiator, or what else did they see as the opportunity?
Not only a differentiator, but really to drive the support that they wanted and the quality of support that they were going to provide to the industry and their families. If you think about it, right, you can scrape the internet. There's tools and all sorts of approaches to gather information, compile the information, use AI to make it look pretty. There's a vast difference between some of that and actually understanding and walking through communities, walking through and talking to the leadership team, head of nursing, executive director, to understand the level of quality of support that they're going to provide at a local level. That's what Oasis brought to this equation. So we were very attractive to them.
Yeah, I think the information, it's very smart thinking as I'm processing it. Sure, the information is good, and digitally you can get a lot of information, but are you going to put your loved one in a facility without an emotional connection or without the guidance and advice that ensures that you're making the right decision? And it sounds like they wanted that high touch as part of their portfolio.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And it's one of the main things. I don't know where we want to take the conversation, but one of the things, obviously, the infusion of cash, the infusion of resource, the technical chops, for a lack of a better term, that Silver is bringing is really exciting. But it enables us to really, instead of having two separate models, we're calling it the unified placement strategy. We're combining those models where we can then open up our reach digitally, but drive that to a local advisor in their territory to provide that local support.
Yeah. So what I like about that, I don't mean to be overly effusive or gushy, but what I really like about that, John, is um, that driving it down to the local model, these are people who live in the community themselves. They are entrepreneurs. They own their business. They have every reason to really pay attention and make sure that the families are getting what they need. It's their reputation. It's their livelihood.
Oh,
So
100%. They have to live there. They're building a local presence that they live in every day, right? And these digital leads are not across country where we're saying, hey, go help somebody. You know, if I'm in, Paoli, Pennsylvania, I'm not trying to support somebody in Washington, right? State of Washington. Every one of these digital leads are coming in. They're not even leads. We don't consider them leads. We consider them families, right? The technical side can be really cold and very just a matter of fact. Yeah, they're referral, they're lead. These are families, and they're families in the backyard of our local advisors, and we want to connect them.
So out of everything you just said, what's most interesting to me is that there's a Paoli, Pennsylvania. Is there really a Paoli, Pennsylvania?
There is a Paoli, Pennsylvania, I promise.
Okay, I need to find it on the map. If there's a Wawa, Pennsylvania, there could be a Paoli, Pennsylvania. So let's look at that. So we've got this ability now. You're thinking about them as not leads, but as families. You've got this ability with Oasis to get a broader reach, to combine that digital with that personal white glove. That sounds great. Sounds like culture's great. All of this sounds awesome. But in any merger, any acquisition where you have to bring either employees, team members, or franchisees along, there's got to be challenges in that. So what's it like when you go to the franchise group and you say, hey, guess what?
Wait a minute. Do you have a camera in my office or on my Zoom call? The best thinking, it can make all the sense in the world to our senior leadership team. And this is important about getting the buy-in up front and early before you go too far down the road. So as I referenced the unified placement strategy, which you got gushy about a little bit, but candidly, before we rolled this out to the franchise system, we've been testing it for well over a year. We're bringing the local insight with the technical capability. Technical is one piece, the local is one piece, the process is one piece, and the discipline, right? What are we setting out to do and how are we setting out to do it? So we've been working on that. We are now in a position to roll this out nationally. So, the book, Who Moved My Cheese? That's real. That is real. Wait a minute.
So from who? From your support center / corporate, or from franchisees, from everybody, from this Oasis people? Whose cheese got moved?
Yes.
And how?
Yes. Right. This isn't our model. We've had a 10-year-old model that's proven.
Says who? Says
our franchisees.
Right.
Says our existing Oasis support team. This is what we've done, right? Here's how we've done it. My challenge is, and I often reference Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, and the hedgehog model, right? When you dig your head in and you hope things are going to go by. Well, if we do that, the only thing going by is our industry and our ability to support that industry. So why would we think a 10-year-old model shouldn't or couldn't evolve, right? So from that perspective, yes. The digital side of the house now, right? Because we've got regional digital teams that are taking these leads, pre-qualifying them, connecting with families, understanding as much as we can in a very short period of time before we refer that over to our local. Well, this is the way we've always done it, right? So blending those two to say, not either or, but and, is going to be the key to our success. And that sounds so simple. That takes a lot of change management, a lot of consistent measures, and a consistent communication.
Yeah. So one's got peanut butter, the other's got chocolate, and together we make this great Reese's, but there's a lot of resistance getting those two together.
It's a lot of getting that recipe right before you can take it to make it taste good.
Sure.
Yep.
That sounds right. So you are how long into this acquisition now? When were you acquired?
About 2 years ago.
Okay. So can you just give us the 2 years ago and today in the acquisition? Where were you when you first announced it, and where are you today, and how did you get there?
Where were we physically, or where were we?
No, what was the temperature of the room when you get everybody together and say, hey, guess what?
So it's a really good question. So at our first strategic summit during the Civil War, We got bloodied, right? There was some tears. There was a lot of emotion, and we all recognized how much passion we had for the business, right? And what it meant to each individual that was in that room. But we really worked hard to understand the path forward and what company did we want to become. As we were having that moment and we got around, we had a statement. Basically, we wanted to be, a company that was poised to positively disrupt the industry. We all agreed to that.
You and the support and franchisees agreed
Support
that
and the
we wanted to be
franchisees.
disruptors.
In parallel, Tim and I were talking, our founder and I were talking about the acquisition. Do we go forward with it? What does this mean? In one way, we looked and said, we now have the runway, we have the capability, we have the finance, the resource to do it. On the other hand, we're like, oh dear Lord, not only did we set this new stage, but now we're going to drop this bomb. And it was.
So when you said we have the resources, the finance, et cetera, to do it, you mean to disrupt?
To put the pieces together to bring a service solution to disrupt the industry, yes.
Yeah. So now you have to bring the franchisees in and say, hey, remember when we promised that we would disrupt? We agreed together we disrupt. We have a vehicle in which to do it.
Well, and I was very open with them to say, as we decided to do this, without this acquisition, how were we going to do it? Right? Get better at just what we were doing, refining our model. That's an opportunity. It's not disruptive. We've been delivering that model for 8 years. What were we going to do different? How were we going to improve? How were we going to get more efficient?
So where are you today? I mean, getting a franchise group to say that they have a new grandparent, if you will. Oasis is the parent. Now we've got a new grandparent in the house. We've got new family members here. Where are you today? What's their acceptance level of this, of Oasis as our parent company now and what they can bring?
Much more. They're embracing it much more, right? We just got back from Dallas at our strategic summit. And one of the key things that helps me really feel good about what we're doing, and moreover, the acceptance, we talked about purpose. And I was fully expecting the franchisees to say, we need an Oasis purpose. And almost to the person that represented franchisees, they said, why shouldn't this be a silver purpose? That gives me goosebumps. I just got goosebumps as I said it to you.
And I got them too from it, because when they say it's a yours, mine, and ours situation now. They want now to be part of ours.
It's exactly right.
That's a shining moment. Kudos to you, the Oasis leadership team, including your founder and others, and to Silver to set that platform. And what I want to just share with the audience is that that's a 2-year journey for you. I've mentioned this to you before, John. That's accelerated. I mean, for many organizations, they're in year 3 before they're seeing that type of alignment, that type of we mindset, that we need one purpose statement for Silver and Oasis. So congratulations on getting there in an accelerated way. I know that you blame this, your hair, your color of your silver hair on this transition, but I'll tell you, it would have fallen out if it took another year, as it does with a lot of organizations. So kudos.
Thank you.
Let's just help people as we wrap up, John. Think back on the leadership lessons that you've learned from aligning your strategy, embedding a culture with franchisees, and going through an acquisition. What are the things that you've learned that you can help others that are often just dealing with one of those things?
Oh boy. I think some of the challenges, we needed to firmly speak to what the acquisition was going to mean to each individual franchisee, to our employees, and really to the industry. If we didn't have that clear, then why were we doing this? Because I can tell you, when we first, I introduced and we made this announcement, we had met in October. We announced the formal acquisition when the deal was done in March at our national convention.
Wow.
And I was wildly surprised, even though I wore a overcoat, that I wasn't peppered with tomatoes. But when I tell you a pin drop could have been heard, it was not embraced by, hey, yeah, everybody went immediately to, what does this mean to me?
For me. Well, you said it beautifully, right? We have to set the stage for what does this mean for our business or the industry? How do we impact the industry? We impact the industry. What's in it for your individual franchise, your business, and what does it mean for you are the questions that need to be answered. And so went from pin drop of, oh my goodness, with them, what's in it for me, my business, et cetera, to today saying we need to adopt a purpose for our business, Silver and Oasis.
Yeah, there were a few steps in there where there was some pretty significant criticisms, right? So we didn't just get to one purpose as Silver. There was a lot of, no, you're not communicating. One of the things that, our leadership team, and I remind them often, and myself often, is we got to develop yet another layer of thick skin, right? Don't take this personally. Understand that people need the process and the time and the way they do it. We can communicate. I'm realizing no matter how we communicate, I don't think it's ever really good enough, right? So we need to communicate consistently in multiple channels, multiple ways, obviously, but just being available as a leader to these folks when they have questions is really important for us.
So I took away two of, I'm sure, what is many lessons learned, but the first one is don't take it personally. I'll add to that. Change is hard. It takes time. And if you're the leader, you're up for a lot of criticism. So develop a thick skin. And the other one is no matter how many times you've communicated through however many channels you've done it, there's always more ways to connect and engage your employees and your franchisees in the change message.
Never underestimate that, not only in the need for it, but the importance of it.
Yep. And those messages are, what does this mean for our industry? What does it mean for your business? What does it mean for you individually?
For sure.
Yeah. So that all goes down to start with the why.
That's exactly right.
John Benbrook, I don't care what they say about you. I think you're pretty awesome. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us in the Magenta Mix Podcast studio today. And we just lost John's picture. What a good end to the podcast. We may have lost John's connection, but we thank John for joining us today and welcome him back to the podcast anytime. So this is Gary Magenta encouraging you to listen, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and follow us on this journey to hear more from people like John and others who are leading change. John, we lost your picture for a minute and I said goodbyes for you, but why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to the Magenta Mix podcast audience.
Thank you so much, Gary. Sorry about that technical glitch. It's been a pleasure. I was nervous about this. It was actually a lot of fun to be with you and to share a little bit about what we're doing. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, don't worry. I have a whole list of notes of what you can do differently next time. Ladies and gentlemen, I kid John because I'm so fond of him. Great having you here, John. Hope to see you soon.
Great seeing you, Gary. Take care.